Hello parents, it's Nikki again. I'd like to welcome you to the second video in our series about how we can use executive function to help make distance learning successful. In the last video, we looked at simple ways to tap into the school mindset so that we can all leverage that magical operating system our kids' brains use when they are physically on campus. We also talked briefly about how we can get our kids to transition more easily into their virtual school day. Today, we'll be talking about behaviors that fall under the category of action. Just as a reminder, the action category behaviors are about the ability to monitor and control your own actions. Of course, as with all the categories, there are many subtopics from which to choose. Since distance learning is going to require a lot of independent work from our kiddos, we're going to focus on empowering our children to take independent action in school-related matters. A crucial step in getting our kids to be more independent and self-governing is setting up and practicing routines. Routines will not only help your kid know how to do what they need to do, but can also help your kid decide what to do if they don't know what they should do. As mentioned in the last video, having a routine can also make kids more likely to initiate tasks they are hesitant to do. Basically, routines are awesome tools. Now, your day is probably already full of logistical routines. A routine for getting ready for school, a routine for logging into Zoom meetings, a routine for break, a routine for dinner. However, we can also use routines for more heady things, like teaching our kids what to do when they don't remember what they're supposed to do, or a routine for what to do when they're having trouble with schoolwork or technology. Now, if you're like me and inherently hate the idea of structure and routines, it might help to realize that even an unroutine is still a routine. Our kids' brains are constantly creating new connections and routines for everything, whether we call it a routine or not. Hello, meltdown in the candy aisle. Yeah, that's a routine. Before we head into the nuts and bolts of making a routine, I need to talk about one crucial aspect of functional routines, and that is questions. Functional routines will walk us through a series of questions and decisions. Take a moment and think about how you get ready for your day. I bet a lot of your routines are based on questions. When you're getting ready to leave the house, you probably mentally say, do I have my wallet and keys? Check. What am I doing today? What do I need in order to be successful in that? Check. What's the weather? Should I bring a jacket? Etc. The questions you ask yourself act as a series of behavioral prompts. What's crazy about this is by repeating and practicing these questions during a routine, your child will eventually adopt these questions as their own self-talk. As a result, this will make some routines more easy to generalize in the future. For example, your kid might find themselves using the questions from the Get Homework Done routine and applying them to their Get My Chores Done routine. So, if we want our kids to work independently, they need to have and follow routines. However, the goal of this isn't just that you spend all day enforcing the routine. That's not super helpful. The goal is that you will empower your child to take ownership of their behavior by helping them to create their own routines. This empowerment occurs by including them in the process of making the routine. In doing this, you are modeling for them how it's done and showing them that you think they're capable of giving good input. Eventually, this inclusion in the process will allow them to make their own routines and become even more independent. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Before we include our kids, we need to do a little preparation because, well, preparation is the key to success. I'm going to refer to this preparation as your homework. Your first homework assignment is to observe and dissect your day and identify an area that needs to be addressed most urgently. Then I want you to choose one simple behavior goal you want to work on with your child. It's very important that this behavior is very simple, something that can be completed in 3 to 5 steps. I'll use an example to explain what I mean by simple. Let's say your goal is, I want my kids to get ready for bed on their own. This sounds simple enough, but if you actually break down the behaviors required, there are way too many of them, and it feels daunting for little brains. The reason it doesn't feel daunting for us older folks is that we've already learned to chunk. Yeah, that's the actual scientific word for it, chunking. Basically, what that means is that we've taken a lengthy checklist and grouped related tasks together into smaller, simpler routines, like the bath time routine, the brushing teeth routine, the getting PJs on routine, etc. We then connect all these routines together to create the complicated behavior. Often parents will set a far too complicated behavior goal, and this can cause kids and parents a massive amount of frustration. So, with that said, take a look at some of your daily problem spots and think of some behavior goals that can be achieved in 3 to 5 steps. As you and your child get better at this, you can move forward into connecting those chunked routines into more complicated behaviors. All right, let's assume you've chosen your simple behavior goal. Your next assignment is to brainstorm the actions you think are needed to reach that goal. And then brainstorm some questions that can cue those specific actions. Let's say you want your kid to be able to independently complete their homework. The actions you might list could be able to locate his homework assignments, be able to log into the platform, choose what to do first. Now, this last step may actually require its own routine if it's the first time your child is having to make decisions like this. All right, let's look at some questions that could cue that behavior. Things like, where is my homework posted? What information do I need to log into the platform? And what should I choose to work on first? Okay, now that you've picked a specific behavior goal and done a little prep work, it's time to sit down and start creating routines with your kid. At this point, it's really important to make sure we are listening to our children throughout this process. This is not us telling them the routine. This is us using the prep work we did to guide them in the process of building their own routine. The first step in this process is to empower your kid. Let your kid drive. Share your goal with them and ask them how they would complete the task. You may ask them what they find particularly challenging about the task, as it's likely to be different than it is for you. As they share their thoughts, you can fill in gaps and ask clarifying questions to help them come up with a functional routine. Again, the goal of this is not to help them get to the routine you thought of. The goal is that they make their own routine with your guidance. Letting them have a say in the process is critical. By giving them ownership, they will be more likely to want to complete the routine and more likely to remember it. All right, the second step after you've come up with your routine is to practice. We will talk about memory in a later video, but in short, in order to remember things, we need repeated practice. So, walk your kid through the routine a few times, each time accessing a different part of the brain's memory. Here's some examples. To activate visual memory, have them mentally walk through the actions they will have to complete. Actually have them visualize it in their brain. One expert in the field calls this a mental movie. Another thing we can do is ask them to practice the physical motions they will perform. This will cause muscle memory to be activated and help the kid remember the routine. Now, of course, we can't forget the power of writing and illustrating the routine. This will help by activating visual and muscle memory. And at any point in the process, you can also have them speak the routine to you as well. This uses both verbal and auditory and even some muscle memory centers. Now, these are just suggestions. There are many ways to memorize, so feel free to get creative. You may have to repeat this process a few times on different days until the routine starts to become habit. If you have particularly important routines, or if your child is really struggling, feel free to have a written or illustrated checklist to help her. Again, try to focus on prompting your child with the questions, not the behaviors. All right, step 3 is to reflect. This is a really important step, and undoubtedly your child's first pass won't work perfectly. There are things that you or your kid will want to change. After a few tries, have a conversation with your kid about how things are working out. Again, try to lead them with questions that allow them to do the reflecting. Are you reaching your goal? What's working well? Where are you getting stuck? Maybe together you realize that the steps are slightly out of order, or that you forgot a small but crucial step. Or maybe it's working really well and it's just time to celebrate some success. Step 4. If it's not working, adjust the routine and try again. It's really important for kids to realize that it's not important to get it perfect. Failure is a normal part of the learning process. After a few times through this process, the kids will start to recognize that they are capable of changing outcomes by changing their behavior. And that's a really big step on the path to maturity. All right, step 5, our last step, is to celebrate and reward. One of the ways to make routines become habit is to have a reward. We'll get into more detail later on how and when to reward. But for now, I want to make a suggestion that even if you aren't seeing the results you want right away, still take the time to acknowledge and celebrate their effort and their improvement. By rewarding effort and improvement, you build their stamina to lead into hard things. And as a side product, they will get better at reaching their goals. Okay, so today we learned about how creating routines with our kids allows them to become more independent. You can create routines for almost anything. When you find yourself frustrated with your child's behavior, take a big breath and then start thinking about how a simple routine can help. Just remember to keep the routine small. You can always link different routines together to make a more complex behavior chain. Okay, it's time for our reflection question to help empower action. Find a quiet moment in your kid's day and ask them to share something they did independently today that they have needed help with in the past. Or you can follow up with, what action or thought was different today, and how do you think that helped you succeed independently? Honestly, they may roll their eyes or answer the question while running past you at Mach speed, but the fact that you asked the question shows them that you support their learning process and teaches them the habit of reflecting back on their behavior. Lastly, I know you'd probably like your kids to be more independent as soon as possible, and this might seem like a lot of extra work for you that you don't have time for. But remember that you don't need a major overhaul. You can pick just one thing to work on. Maybe discuss it over dinner or ice cream. Every little thing that your kid learns to do independently will build their skills and their self-confidence. The next video will actually build on the concepts in this one. We'll be looking at how to teach problem solving, because goodness knows we'll be doing a lot of that these days. I hope you guys all find success this week. Good luck, and thanks for watching.